All right, so we've been able to register, meaning create a brand new user, right? Using post, we've been able to retrieve users using get, right? We've been able to update an existing user using put, right? So let's do the last RESTful CRUD operation is to remove something that already exists on a data model, right? On a data set. So let's to do that, let's add a button here at the bottom where we can unregister or just remove this particular user. All right. So to do that, let's go to the template for the profile page, and at the bottom, let's add a brand new button. Right, and we're going to say here unregister, unregister. Okay, and we're going to change this to something red. Right, as in, are you sure? And what we can do here is delete user, right, or unregistered user. And we're going to pass model.user, or we can pass the actual ID. But we'll do that on the controller. Okay? All right. All right, so we have that on the template. Let's implement it on the controller. So let's go to the controller, profile controller. There it is. Let's add that same exact function that we're expecting, model.delete. Okay. And then implement it down here. So the function delete user, and here's the user object, and we're going to use the user service to delete this user. Right? Delete the user, and the only thing that the service actually needs is the ID of the user that we need to remove. Right? So we're only just going to pass it the ID of the user. Right? So this is underscore ID. And again, the server is going to respond to us with some kind of promise, right, that we're then going to use to do something, right? One of the things that we might want to do is we don't want to stay in a profile of somebody who doesn't exist anymore, right? Perhaps we're just going to log them out and jump back to the login page because this user doesn't exist anymore. So for instance, we might say it's going to come back, and here we could do something like model. We can navigate to the login page. To do that, we're going to need the location service, which we already have. We're going to say login location dot URL. We're going to navigate to the login, right? And I believe the URL, the route for login is just /login, I believe. Everybody okay? All right. So this maps to the delete user in the service, in the client service, and the client service is here. There's a delete user, which currently it's using the local array, right? But we don't want that. We want for this to work like all the other ones. I'm just going to copy this from the update user, which looks very, very similar to what we're going to do here. I'm just going to comment out all the work that we did earlier. Instead, I'm just going to paste what the update user was doing. The URL is, notice that the URL is exactly the same. Yes, it's the user and the ID of the user that we're trying to manipulate. Again, this is the syntax that RESTful API suggests as a convention. Instead of a put, we're going to do a delete. Okay, we're going to do a delete, and that's it. We don't need to pass any data, right? The ID of the user that we're trying to delete is part of the URL as a path parameter, and once it's removed, we're going to send back the data back to the client. Although we don't really have any data to respond, right? Perhaps some status information. If we try to do this, notice that if I click on unregister, we get the error saying that there is no route mapped to that URL that we're sending over. There's no delete. There's a put that takes that URL, yes, right? But there is no delete. Okay. So let's go back to the server, right? And hopefully you are seeing a pattern, right? From the controller to the service to the server, back to the service, back to the controller, back to the template. Okay. Right. Hopefully you're seeing a pattern. That ideally you'd be able to replicate on your own. So here's the template, the URL that's going to receive a delete. Notice that this URL is exactly the same URL as this URL. The only way that the server can distinguish between the two URLs is that this is using a put method as opposed to a delete verb. Okay, that's how it distinguishes between what is your intent. All right, so this is going to call a local delete user, which is going to basically do the same exact logic that we had on the client. So let's copy this, right, and put it here. Let's see. We had a request, a response, here we had a. Let's uncomment this out. I don't know if this is actually going to be helpful. Oh yeah, exactly, right. It's iterating over the array of users, looking for a user whose ID matches the user ID. This user ID, we need to parse it from the parameters var user ID. This is request.params.user_ID. Okay, and we're going to pattern match it. When we find it, we have the user. There it is. We're going to find its index in the original array, and we're going to splice them out. Yes? Okay. We could check to see. We could just respond, right, and say that response.send status 200. If everything went okay, perhaps you might want to add some validation. If we didn't find the user, instead return a 404, like we did in update user, right? If we didn't find it, we return a 404. If we find it, we return a 200. Yes? Okay. All right. So let's restart the server. Okay. Let's see. We're Alice, and let's log out first and make sure that we can log in as Alice. Log in. Yes, we're there. Now let's unregister Alice, and notice that it goes back to the login page. And if I try to log in as Alice, notice that user Alice is not found. Okay, it's no longer there. Make sense? Everybody good? All right. I think you have enough to be able to complete the user management, login, registration, clean it up, make it your own, and finish it up. Okay. So now what I'd like to do is focus on the domain objects that are related to Alice or Dan or whatever. Right. So the websites, the pages, the widgets. Right. That too has a distinct pattern, right, that follows the RESTful syntax for those URLs that establish the relationship between objects, the parent-child relationship between the objects.